Curtis, you were 15 when the accident happened, which means that your teenage years were really badly interrupted and you didn't have the kind of teenage years that others had. How did you cope with those years?
Look, that's a perception that people have that an accident like that would have interrupted my teenage years. But when I look back on my life as a 15-year-old, it was no different to any other 15-year-old. I just had to do it from a wheelchair. I had all my friends around me, and they treated me the same as as anyone. So they would include me in everything that they did, and we really pushed the limits the same as any other 15-year-old did. I remember going one time to Jump Rock, which is down at Manly, and it's about a 5 to 6 metre jump off into the Sydney Harbour, and I got sick of the guys going off, leaving me at school and at lunchtime, and they'd go off and come back and have a great time. So one day I went down there and jumped on one of the guys' backs. We jumped in off the cliff into the water, and that sense of inclusion was awesome. That's just one of the shenanigans that I used to get up with my friends. And the wheelchair, I was really light, so they could carry me a lot of different places, and I don't feel as if I missed out on anything.
What about girlfriends, dating?
Yeah, look, I think I might have increased my chances of getting a girlfriend. There is definitely a novelty factor involved with the wheelchair and with my magnetic personality. Yeah, look, getting a girlfriend has never been a problem for me.
Did you have a girlfriend at the time?
No, not at the time, no.
And you did soon after?
Yeah, look, I had a steady girlfriend for about a year to 18 months kind of thing when I was 16 years old. She was the absolute love of my life. We're still friends, actually. But yeah, no, I'd never had any problems getting the girls.
One of the things that I read about at that time about you was that you very quickly got back to sport, love. The accident happened playing rugby, and within 18 months you were playing rugby again.
Yeah, look, for me, I think as a 15-year-old, I had a lot less taken away from me. If I was 18, 19, working, all those sort of responsibilities in the prime of my life, I think the situation may have been different. But my attitude at the time was, something really bad happened to me. I've got to make the best out of a bad situation. And so sport was the one thing for me that I loved to do more than anything else in the world. It was the one thing that I was the best at over anything that I did. So the people at the rehab centre sensed this, and they got me into sport straight away. So I started off by playing table tennis and swimming, and eventually I got introduced to wheelchair rugby, and that's where I found my true passion. And finding your true passion accelerated my rehab, my development. No longer could I play rugby league anymore. Those dreams were shattered. But all of a sudden I had a new dream. I could be the best wheelchair rugby player in the world, and that's what I worked towards through that really tough period.
Would it have mattered if it wasn't sport?
Look, not everybody's into sport, but for me, I found the thing that I was passionate about. For other people, they could be into other things. And I think finding that key element in your life that you can do something that you really, really enjoy, and you can set goals around that passion, then life becomes a lot happier, a lot easier. And for me, getting myself out of that dark hole, setting those goals and becoming successful and achieving definitely helped me, for sure.
Tell us about that dark hole. Was that immediately in the aftermath of the diagnosis?
My accident was a whirlwind. So within 4 months, I was back at school, and I was never really given a chance. I never really gave myself a chance to sit back and reflect. But once I did get back to school and life became, normal again, that's when self-image and dealing with the fatigue of my newer body was adjusting to how it was working. Those were the times that I felt a little bit down, definitely. I felt quite down, for sure. Dealing with being so tired and not being able to keep up with my friends was pretty tough. But like I said before, all that sort of pain was taken away through surrounding myself with other people that played sport, and surrounding myself with my friends who were on the same page as me.
You were very quick to bounce back, as it were, after your accident. How would you imagine someone who hasn't done that, who's been perhaps weeks, months, maybe even years, just sort of sitting there and not really doing anything, how would you suggest they get out and do something about their lives?
Well, there's a number of things that they can do. You know, the first of all, it just involves a decision. Right, I've had enough of this. I've got to do something about it. A lot of people in that situation don't know what to do. Okay, I guess the first thing would be to reach out to someone and say, look, this is what I want to do. Can I get some help? There are so many different ways that you can get help. Talking to someone, you can do self-development courses. You can figure out what it is that you really want to do. But it first of all involves a decision. Okay, I'm sick of being stuck, and I want to make something out of my life. That's pretty much all it takes. Is that rightio? I'm done. Let's move forward. And so many people get very comfortable in being stuck. It becomes part of their identity, and so to move forward, it becomes very uncomfortable. And so I would say that, if you are in that situation and you are comfortable, there's no pressure to change. If you don't want to change, you don't have to change. But if you do want to change, and if you are sick of where you are, make that first decision. Take that first step to get some help, and then you can move forward from there.
What about your family? You have a younger sister, and your parents were around. What did you look to them for in terms of support?
My family were an amazing support, definitely. What they did for me was, I'm forever grateful, definitely. I think, I'm not too sure about the impact that the accident had on them. I'm sure it was pretty tough, and I knew that. And so for me, that kind of gave me inspiration to show them that this wasn't going to beat me. Because I knew that if I went downhill, other people around me would go downhill as well. They'd become worried about me. And I didn't want that on my conscience. So I wanted to show people that this wasn't going to beat me. And I did that through my sport and through just getting on with it, really.
We're talking about the issue of male role models in a general way. To what extent was your father such a role model for you?
Dad became more like a brother than a father to me. He was there at my beck and call, and he was, my biggest support. He was amazing. I always wanted to live up to my dad's expectations, so definitely inspired me to become, the best that I could be at whatever I did.
Let's talk about manhood, that notion of manhood. Before the accident, you were obviously observing, as all kids do, how their parents actually behave. Was there anything that you recall that you took out from your father's behavior towards the family?
Not really. I can think of some negative role modeling that I took from my father. My father was he's definitely a guy that calls a spade, and growing up in the late the early 60s and stuff like that in the South Island of New Zealand, it was a rugby playing, beer drinking kind of a culture, and so he grew up with stories of Friday night after work going to the pub, getting pissed, getting into a fight, and lots of sexual encounters and things like that, and so that was glorified. And when I started playing rugby league and started idolising rugby league players, that was the culture there as well. And so I took on board a lot of those, values and beliefs. And so for me, I have a reputation as being a very sensitive, kind of a caring kind of a person. So it was kind of a juxtaposition for me to take on board some of these violent and aggressive kind of character traits. And so it took me quite a few years to address those problems, definitely.
And you were doing that consciously? You wanted to change that?
No, not at the time. I thrived on it. I thought it was what it was to be a man, was to be aggressive and to be macho and not sensitive and talk about stuff like that for sure.
What changed that?
Well, for me, as a wheelchair rugby player, being aggressive and losing your temper on court is one of the worst things that you can do for the game. I started, it's doing my team no favours by spending time in the sin bin and things like that, and it totally took me out of my, the team's processes that we had in place. Me playing aggressive and being a wild man out there doesn't fit with the rest of the team, and I soon learnt that it affected the mood of the team around me as well. And so I started to mellow out quite a lot. I got some sport psychology to deal with that sort of stuff. And, today I consider myself to be a very cool, calm and mature type of player that doesn't bow down to that aggressive nature anymore. The aggressive nature definitely comes out when I get drunk. And that's one thing that I refrain from doing a lot these days. I enjoy a beer and, but I'm definitely aware of the green monster that comes out when I get drunk, and I always regret the things that I say and things that I do. So that's one of those things I don't do anymore.
Did your father see this change?
I don't know. I don't know if he saw this change. And I don't even know if he realised that he had that impact on me. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I love the fact that my father is who he is and he doesn't care what anybody thinks. And so I'm not too sure if he was aware of that sort of side of me coming out, because of his influence, yeah.
What about your mother's influence on you?
I've got most of my mother's traits. She's a very shy person. She doesn't like the centre of attention. I guess I get that side of it from my dad. He's definitely an extrovert. My mum is a very caring and a deep thinking kind of a person, and I definitely get those sort of things. She's a person that's very aware of what's going on around her and the emotions of the people that she interacts with, and I've definitely picked that up from her as well.
Do you have a good relationship with them both?
I have a great relationship with my parents. Definitely, and my sister as well. We're a very close-knit family.
Does religion or faith or spirituality play any role, and if so, did it always?
Strangely enough, I went to Catholic high schools throughout my life, but I have no affiliation to any religion whatsoever. Mum and Dad never went to church or anything like that. So for me, spirituality is definitely something that I've taken on board for myself. I think it's driven a lot of my decisions, but I'm not a person that's totally devoted to it. Yeah, I think I've just got my own version of religion. Yeah.
Your own code.
Yeah, my own code. I mean, I don't. Maybe there was a Jesus. Who knows what he did? I really don't know. But for me, I kind of believe that there's definitely a higher purpose, and I feel that what happened to me, happened to me for a reason. I'm not entirely sure what that reason was, but I think I've tried to make the most out of, why that happened to me.
But it didn't play any role in your psychological rehabilitation, as it were?
No, religion had nothing to do with my...
You relied on yourself?
Yeah, totally. It was what was inside that got me through.
Today you're a very successful wheelchair rugby star, but you have other parts to your life. Tell us a little bit about those, your work.
Yeah, since moving to Australia, I've kind of reinvented myself. When I was in New Zealand, I lived in New Zealand for about 14 years, and I worked as a television presenter for 6 years of my life, and it just became something that I had to move on from. There was no hard feelings why I left the company or anything. I just had to it came time to leave. And so what I always wanted to do was move back to Australia and be with the people that know me for me, the people that I went to school with, and the guys that I played rugby with and stuff like that. So moving back here has been, I totally feel at home here. I love it. So I work at YouthSafe, and the focus on there is preventing serious unintentional injuries in young people. We talk about young driver safety, we talk about safe celebrating, and give them strategies so that they can, put in place to keep them from hurting themselves. I do the bookings and the administration with the company as well, but my real passion is speaking. I'm an ambassador for Student Horizons, and work with young kids in developing leadership and self-confidence. And I also go around to corporate functions, and I speak to schools about my story. My main focus is about not just overcoming adversity, but smashing it. It's one thing to just overcome something, but for me, it's going over and above that and just nailing it, kind of thing.
Eliminating it.
Yeah, eliminating it, and that's what I've done throughout my life. Is that I've not just been a social wheelchair rugby player. I've reached the absolute pinnacle of my sport. And I'm hoping to do that with my business as well.
And in all of that, there is Curtis the man. How do you identify yourself in terms of manhood now?
In terms of that, look, I think it's really important to. That's a good question, really, isn't it? I think for me, what's most important is that what I'm working on at the moment is not looking for validation in other people. What I'm focusing on right now is filling my own cup. And that may sound quite airy-fairy, but what that means is that for many years I've looked to the outside for love. What I'm doing right now is working on me, figuring out what makes me happy, because if I love myself, that means I can love other people as well. I've been engaged twice. I've had, I don't want to say how many girlfriends, but I've had a string of girlfriends, and I'm yet to find, the person that I'd like to spend the rest of my life with. Along the way, I've probably made some decisions that hurt some people. But in saying that, I did that because I was following my heart, and I'd rather get out of a relationship rather than stay in one and be miserable. So it was like ripping a scab off. I had to do it, but in the end, I don't regret making those decisions. So for me, what's important is figuring out what makes me happy, what makes me tick, what feeds my soul, what gives me that spiritual awareness. And by doing that, I attract those sort of people into my life, and I'm able to be loved, and I'm able to love as well. So I think that's really important, and especially in times of adversity. If you've lost your job, or you are in a relationship that is declining. If you've if you've been bullied, or if you're in a really bad situation, I think that if you can internally be comfortable with who you are, then those sorts of things have lesser an effect on you and society as well.
One of the key things about one's self-image is sexuality. What role does it play in your scheme of things, in your scheme of life, sex?
It's a big part. Yeah, definitely. For me, sex in a relationship is really important, and I think that's what may be attractive to women, from my point of view, is that because I'm not a big, hunky, athletic guy.
You're not puny either.
No, I'm not puny, but I guess women see me as less dominating, and
less threatening.
Less threatening, yeah. I think for me, being paralysed from the chest down and not having any sort of feeling, I've really adapted, my sexual experience so that I can enjoy it. I have no feeling, where it counts. But that doesn't stop me from having a really meaningful and an amazing sexual relationship with my partners. For me, the tables have turned a little bit. I focus on the enjoyment of the woman, and for me that actually works in my favour, because that creates a whole lot more connection and love, as opposed to, you know, the dominating side of what I think a lot of males approach sex to.
It's more erotic.
Yeah, it's more of a mental thing. It's definitely more erotic. It's more of a sensual kind of act. I mean, you know, I don't mind a quickie here and there, but for me, sex is definitely a more of a connection thing, for sure.
How do you have a quickie if you don't have feelings?
You'll be surprised.
I've seen a film where a guy in your position loves his ears being tickled.
Yeah.
That's essential.
Yeah, look, I have no feeling from here down, but the bits that I can feel are definitely hypersensitive. So for me, touch and that sort of stuff is how I get off, for sure.
So we're still talking about the sense of manhood. Do you think that there is a role to play? I mean, obviously you are playing that role as a role model for youth, for younger men. Is there something consciously that you try and impart to them about being a man?
Yeah, I've done some work with an organisation called The Right Journey, and that's about teaching boys to be men, because, you know, from the media, from you know, sporting heroes and things like that, there is a perception of a man being this very dominating, you know, person that is quite offensive to me in some ways. And so, yeah, definitely for me, I think I've got a different approach to, you know, what the usual society sees as a man, and so definitely like to inspire young men to think a little bit differently about the way they approach life, for sure.
Can you think of any figures that you hold up as you know, your heroes, as men heroes, not just sporting heroes? They can be both.
Yeah. So probably my number one kind of sporting hero would be Kelly Slater. He's a guy that, you know, he must have no fear because of the waves that he surfs and things like that. And he is, what I love most about Kelly is that, you know, the lifestyle that he lives. He's doing the one thing that he is, you know, absolutely loves more than anything in the whole wide world, and he makes a living out of it. And he doesn't get a whole lot of recognition from the wider sporting community. Wow, some other role models for me would be, you know, the Dalai Lama is one guy that I've been reading a lot about, and for me, that's a guy with every excuse under the sun to want to be a violent person that needs retribution to feel better about himself, but he has just sucked it all up and become one of the most, or he is the most compassionate man that, you know, I've ever read about. And so I think we can learn a whole lot from a person like the Dalai Lama, for sure.
That's a good male role model.
Yeah. Yeah, whereas, you know, I guess a lot of society would see him as being weak, because he hasn't retaliated, and he continues to be passive in his protest.
Like Gandhi. Interesting. Okay, so you have some goals, ambitions that you want to achieve, both in sport and with your work. Are there some challenges, either personal challenges that you want to overcome, or public ones?
I've recently just made a list of, I guess, 10 things that I wanna smash. You know, these are things that definitely put me outside of my comfort zone, because I feel that by not pushing my limits, I become really bored. I become depressed and sad, and I'm uninspired. So to keep living, I've always got to set the bar higher and higher and higher. So at the moment, I'm just working towards doing a lot more philanthropic work. I'm just about to go to Bali and do 2 weeks over there working with some orphanages, and I'm also going scuba diving as well. But the thing about going to Bali for me is I'm doing it by myself, whereas previously I've travelled with other people, and this is going to be a massive challenge for me, not only because I'll have a lot of time to myself to to think and to, get to know myself a little bit better. But the accessibility issues in Bali will be a definite challenge for me.
Have you scuba dived before?
Only in a pool, yeah. I haven't done open water stuff. Yeah. So I think for me, yeah, definitely, making that list. I mean, I know, I know that goals get talked about quite a lot, but for me, they're the one thing that's got me through, some really tough times. I haven't dived into the psychology or anything like that, but for me, a simple thing is setting a goal that is pushing yourself outside your usual comfort zone, and achieving that is definitely a great feeling.
What are some of the others, if you can list them for us?
For me, just to develop my speaking, there's a website called TED, and one day I'd love to be a renowned TED speaker, and that's going to take some time to develop. Obviously, I'm at the very beginning stages of my speaking career, definitely, but I would love to own my own business, not just a speaking business, but I would like to be involved in some sort of commercial activity, whether it's a cafe or investing in a travel company or something like that. I really love to do that for sure. I've got some physical goals, like I'd love to cycle from Perth to Broome and raise money. There's an organisation that already does that, so
You'll have to explain that. How are you going to cycle?
There are hand cycles. They're just three-wheeled bikes that I can use by myself. But for a trip like that, I would prefer to do it as a tandem. Yeah.
Have you done that before?
Not a tandem. No, I've done plenty of cycling.
Right. So there are the challenges.
Yeah.
And you obviously have a fairly long-term view of that. What about the short term? You were saying you're feeling a little bit bored and not satisfied. Is that likely to last?
For me, I know that I'm in a setting up period, so I'm definitely dealing with some patience issues there. I want results right now, and I don't want to wait for them, sort of thing. But I'm working with people to help me through that, and as long as I've got the overall goal, and then set my little benchmarks that I can reach. Right, to get there, I need to do this, and this kind of thing, like like you're climbing a ladder kind of thing. And so once I've dealt with the patience issues, I'll definitely feel less impatient about it. Yeah.
Well, you've been very patient with us, but I think we better get out of your way. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.